The film opens in 1961, inside a department store in Philadelphia. A store clerk rushes to a young woman who's just given birth in the fitting room. The doctor arrives, but the mother is in tears. The baby won't stop crying, and the doctor looks shocked when he examines the newborn's body. He tells her that every one of the baby's bones has been broken. This child is named Elijah, the same man who will become known later as Mr. Glass. The scene then shifts decades ahead to the present day, where we meet David, a quiet security guard traveling by train back to Philadelphia after a job interview in New York. He sits beside a woman, Sarah, and flirts a bit, but she tells him she's married. David takes off his wedding ring, revealing the cracks in his own marriage. The conversation is awkward, and she soon moves to another seat. Moments later, the train suddenly jerks violently. Everything starts shaking as passengers are thrown around. Days later, when David wakes up, he's lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and police. He's completely unharmed. The doctor explains that there were 131 people on the train and David is the only survivor. Not only that, but he doesn't have a single scratch on him. Everyone else was killed instantly. The doctor can't understand how he's alive. At the hospital, he's met by his worried son, Joseph, and his estranged wife, Audrey. She's relieved he's alive, but there's a distance between them. A few days later, David attends the memorial for the victims. There's a lingering sadness in the air. People whisper about how he survived without a mark. Later, David finds a small purple envelope left on his car windshield. Inside, a single note reads, "How many days of your life have you been sick?" The question sticks in his mind. Later at home, David quietly asks Audrey if she can remember him ever being ill. But she can't, realizing she's never seen him with a cold, flu, or even a scratch. Meanwhile, across the city, we see a grown-up Elijah for the first time. His brittle bones have left him confined to a cane and plagued by constant pain, but his mind is sharp. He's obsessed with comic books, convinced that they reflect deeper truths about the human condition, stories of heroes and villains born out of tragedy. He's the one who sent David that note, believing the train crash survivor may be the opposite of him, a man who cannot break. Later, David and Joseph arrive at Elijah's art gallery, filled with rare comic book drawings displayed behind glass. David mentions the note that Elijah left on his car, saying he's here because he found it and wants to understand what this man is after. As they sit across from each other, Elijah studies David carefully. He asks him if he's ever been sick or seriously injured in his life. David thinks for a moment and tells him no, except for one time, back in college, he got into a car accident with his then girlfriend, now wife, and the crash ended his football career. Elijah listens intently, almost skeptical of David's story. Then he starts talking about his theory. He tells him he spent his life studying the idea that comic books are exaggerations of real people who live among us, people born with extraordinary abilities. He tells David that one of the signs of a superhuman is being the sole survivor of a tragedy. Elijah explains that when he saw the news about the train accident that killed over 100 people but left one man alive and unharmed, he knew that man had to be special. David stares at him unimpressed. He tells Elijah that he doesn't know what game he's playing, but he's not interested in whatever he's selling. He gets up to leave, thinking this is all nonsense, just some scam. Before David leaves, Elijah asks what he does for a living. David tells him he's a security guard at the local stadium, and Elijah smiles quietly, as if that job confirms his theory that David's instincts are drawn to protecting people. The next day, David's at work, scanning people as they enter the stadium. His coworker calls over the radio and says there's a guy outside asking for him. David steps out and sees Elijah, dressed sharply in his signature purple outfit. Elijah tells him he's been thinking about their talk and came to show David something. As they walk together, David continues checking tickets, and while doing so, he brushes against a tall man. For a brief second, David sees a vision, an image of a silver gun with a black grip. The man looks calm on the outside, but something about him isn't right. David tells Elijah quietly that the man has a gun. Elijah looks surprised, asking how he could possibly know that. David can't explain it, it just came to him. They both watch as security starts patting people down. The man notices and quickly slips out of line, walking away fast. Elijah, still trying to process it, asks again how David knew. But David doesn't know how to explain it. Later, Elijah spots the same man outside the stadium and decides to follow him. He calls out, asking the man to stop, but the man ignores him and heads into a subway station. Elijah carefully follows him down the stairs, but his brittle bones fail him. His foot slips on a wet step, and he tumbles violently down the entire flight of stairs. He lies there in pain, groaning, bones cracked and broken again, but from his position on the ground, he looks up and sees it. The man's silver gun with a black grip, exactly as David had described. That evening, David is in his basement, lifting weights. Joseph stands by, spotting him. David lifts what he thinks is 250 pounds and tells Joseph to take some weight off. But Joseph secretly adds more. David lifts again, easily. Joseph keeps adding plates, testing him. Eventually, David realizes his son has been increasing the weight far past what he thought he could handle. Shocked, he keeps lifting, until they run out of weights to add. David realizes he's just lifted well over 350 pounds without breaking a sweat. He looks at Joseph, stunned, both of them realizing something impossible might be happening. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Elijah is now under Audrey's care. She's a physical therapist assigned to help him recover from his latest fall. Elijah takes this chance to talk to her, asking about her husband's old football injury. She tells him about the car accident years ago, how David's car flipped, leaving them both hurt. She tells him even though it ended his football dreams, she was secretly relieved. She never liked the violence of the sport and believed that maybe it was God's way of changing their path. Elijah listens, quietly piecing everything together, realizing that David might have faked being injured to save his relationship. Back at the stadium, David's strange ability continues to grow. As crowds pass him, he feels faint flashes of their actions, good and bad. One man walks by, and David sees a quick image of him smuggling something illegal into the building. Acting on instinct, David stops him, searches him but finds nothing. Embarrassed, he starts to question whether these visions are real at all or if he's imagining things. Soon, David gets a call from Joseph's school. Joseph got into a fight and his teacher tells him all about it. As he leaves with Joseph, Joseph tells his father that he fought a bully but got beat up. He tells him that he thought they were the same, that if David has powers, then he must too. But he's confused why he's not strong. That night, while David and Audrey clean up after dinner, the situation takes a dark turn. David looks back and freezes when he sees Joseph holding a loaded gun and pointing it at him. Audrey gasps in horror, demanding that Joseph put it down. Joseph's hands are trembling. He tells them he's going to prove that his father is indestructible. David tries to stay calm. He tells Joseph to lower the gun, but the boy refuses, tears filling his eyes. David tells him that if he pulls the trigger, he'll walk out of their lives and never come back. That hits Joseph hard and starts crying, realizing what he's doing, and slowly lowers the gun. Audrey grabs it and sets it aside, finally bringing them relief. The next day, David heads to Elijah's art gallery, clearly upset. He tells him about what happened the previous night, how Joseph nearly shot him because of the things Elijah's been saying. David warns him to stay away from him and his family, but Elijah insists he's not delusional. He explains that he followed the man who left the stadium weeks ago and confirms he really did have the silver gun with the black grip, just like he said. David listens but remains unconvinced. He finally opens up and tells Elijah about something from his childhood, that he almost drowned when two boys pushed his head underwater. He tells him that if he were really indestructible, that incident would have never nearly killed him. That night, David and Audrey go on a quiet date, hoping to rebuild the bond they lost years ago. Over dinner, they talk about the good moments from their past, the small things that made them fall in love before life pulled them apart. It's a soft emotional moment, neither of them say much, but the connection between them begins to return. Later that night, when they get home, David plays the messages on their answering machine. One of them is from Elijah. He tells David about a comic book he once read, how heroes always have a weakness, something that balances their strength. He tells David that water might be his. The words linger with David long after the call ends. That same evening, David drives out to the rail yard where the remains of the crashed train are stored. He steps into the destroyed train car and stares at the seats, the shattered windows and mangled steel. He realizes there's no way anyone could have survived this, yet he did. He remembers the car accident from years ago, how he ripped the car door off its hinges to save Audrey's life. For the first time, the truth begins to take shape in his mind. Elijah might have been right all along. The next day, David goes to the train station. He stands among the crowd, closing his eyes as people brush past him. Each time someone bumps into him, he feels flashes of their lives, moments of cruelty, deceit and violence. Then he senses something darker. A tall man walks past him, and David sees a vision of him breaking into a house and harming the homeowner. Without hesitation, David decides to follow him. He trails the man to a quiet suburban neighborhood, where the man breaks into a home again. David slips inside after him, and in one of the rooms, he finds two young girls tied up. He unties them quickly and whispers for them to stay quiet. He moves deeper into the house and finds the mother also bound. Before he can act, the attacker appears behind him and shoves him over a balcony into the backyard pool. David crashes into the water and struggles helplessly under the pool cover. Panic floods in. His greatest weakness is water. He thrashes, gasping for air, until the two girls he freed reach down and pull him out, saving his life. Soaked and exhausted, David staggers back into the house. He finds the man and grabs him from behind, using all his strength to choke him until he collapses, saving everyone in the house. The next morning, David and Audrey sit quietly at the breakfast table. When Joseph joins them, David slides a folded newspaper across the table. On the front page is a story about a mysterious man who saved a family from a break-in. Joseph looks at the article, then looks at his father, and realizes the hero in the story is him. Overwhelmed, Joseph's eyes fill with tears. A few days later, David visits Elijah's art gallery for an exhibition. The two step away from the crowd and into Elijah's private office, surrounded by comic books and artwork. Elijah congratulates him for saving the family. They shake hands, but as they do, David's power triggers. He sees horrifying visions of Elijah's past. He sees him causing the very disasters he had been investigating: the hotel fire, the plane crash, and the train derailment. All those innocent people died because Elijah was searching for someone who could survive. David pulls his hand back stunned. Elijah looks at him and quietly says that now he knows his purpose. He tells David that he is the villain in the comic books and David is the hero. David leaves the gallery and later contacts the police. Elijah is arrested and charged with terrorism. He's sent to a mental institution, while David finally accepts the truth about who he really is. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.